you took like $1 in 1950 and gave it to an entry-level factory worker and then gave another dollar to a Wall Street investor, conventional wisdom says, both of their fortunes grew as the
Right.
American economy boomed over the next few decades.
Right.
But, I mean, look at where we are today. The investor's wealth bought an entire neighborhood of houses, while the wage worker's dollar can barely buy a cup of coffee. The gap between them isn't some grand, shadowy conspiracy. It's really just a math equation.
Yeah, and it is a math equation that is compounding faster than ever right now. It's creating an economy that feels, well, fundamentally broken to anyone who is just starting out.
Yeah.
Like if you're trying to rent your first apartment or paying off a massive mountain of student loans, it feels impossible.
Welcome to the Missing Lessons, where we explain what school never did. Today, we're taking a deep dive into the mechanics of wealth. We are looking at that old saying, the rich get richer and the poor get poorer.
Which is something you hear constantly, right? On social media, in the news.
Oh yeah, and probably from your own friends. But today, we're going to strip away the political talking points and look at the underlying systems.
Exactly.
We'll explore the math of capital, the hidden data of changing demographics, the concept of leverage, and even the behavioral economics of scarcity.
Because the goal here is to understand the actual machinery of the economy you are currently stepping into. Because if you don't understand how the gears turn, I mean, you are going to get crushed by them.
So let's start with the most basic gear in that machine, which is the difference between earning a wage and owning capital.
Because I think a lot of people assume that the path to wealth is just, getting a better paying job and working more hours.
That is probably the most common misconception out there. The foundational economic reality we have to address is that the owners of capital, meaning stocks, businesses, real estate, intellectual property, they accumulate wealth at a significantly faster rate than people who only provide labor.
Right.
So if you are trading your time for a paycheck, you are operating on a linear growth curve. An hour worked equals an hour paid. It's a straight line.
Exactly.
The problem is my time is finite. I can't physically work more than 24 hours in a day. So my income has a hard ceiling built into basically the laws of physics.
Right, but capital has no physical ceiling. It operates on an exponential curve. Like a portfolio of investments is earning interest, generating dividends, and appreciating in value 24 hours a day.
It doesn't sleep.
No, it doesn't sleep, it doesn't get sick, and it definitely doesn't need weekends off. In econophysics, there is actually a mathematical model for this known as the Wealth Attained Advantage, or WAA.
Wait, WAA. That sounds like, it sounds like a fancy way of saying the game is rigged in favor of people who already have money.
Well, it's not a rigged game in the sense of a backroom conspiracy, right? It's just a mathematical reality of scale. The Wealth Attained Advantage outlines how having resources automatically lowers your cost of living and at the same time increases your returns. For instance, wealthy entities can absorb higher risks for higher rewards. They get lower interest rates on loans because banks deem them as safer borrowers. They can buy assets in bulk to lower their cost basis.
All right. Meanwhile, if you are broke, it is incredibly expensive.
Very expensive.
You get hit with overdraft fees, you pay high interest rates on credit cards just to cover groceries, and you definitely can't afford to buy things in bulk.
Exactly. That is the negative side of the WA. The positive side is how capital compounds. Let's look at a really tangible scenario. Take two 20-year-olds. One invests $10,000 in an index fund. The other has $0 invested but works incredibly hard at an hourly job.
Okay.
Over 10 years, the investor's money might double purely through compound interest and market growth, requiring 0 physical calories burned.
Wow.
But the worker has to physically labor for every single dollar they earn over that exact same decade. The math inherently favors the capital over the labor.
So the classic analogy is a snowball rolling down a hill. If you're working for a wage, you're building a snowball by hand, packing it tight, scoop by scoop. The moment you stop scooping, it stops growing.
Right.
But if you have capital, your snowball's already rolling down the mountain on its own, gathering snow automatically.
The snowball analogy works great for compound interest, but, well, it misses one crucial detail, which is market volatility and risk absorption.
What do you mean?
Well, sometimes that snowball hits a tree and shatters, the stock market crashes, or, a real estate investment goes underwater. The difference is that the wealthy have the financial bandwidth, the safety net, to absorb that shock, pack the snowball back together, and keep rolling.
Ah, I see.
A wage earner living paycheck to paycheck doesn't have that shock absorber. One medical emergency or a laid-off month shatters their snowball entirely, and they have to start from 0.
I hear you on the mechanics of capital. But, I mean, when we look at the data, it's not just about the math of investments. You see reports all the time showing that CEO pay has skyrocketed by, like, over 1,000% in recent decades, while the federal minimum wage hasn't budged in 15 years.
Yeah, that's true.
To the person working that entry-level job, they are objectively poorer because of inflation. How is that not a sign that the bottom is just falling out?
That is a very real frustration, and inflation is absolutely a hidden tax on wage earners. But we have to be careful not to fall victim to the zero-sum fallacy when looking at macroeconomic data.
The zero-sum fallacy. You mean the idea that for someone to get rich, they must be taking a slice of the pie away from someone else?
Right. Economic growth isn't a fixed pie. When a company invents a new technology that improves logistics, they create entirely new wealth that literally didn't exist before. The pie expands.
Okay, that makes sense.
But to your point about the wage gap, there is a data illusion that frequently distorts how we view this inequality. A lot of studies tracking wages over time ignore non-wage compensation.
You mean things like health insurance and retirement matching?
Yes, exactly. In 1950, non-wage benefits made up a tiny fraction of total employee compensation, like around 5%. Today, they make up nearly 20%, largely because the cost of healthcare in the United States has completely exploded.
Wow.
So employers are actually paying significantly more for their employees' labor than they used to, but the employee never sees that money in their bank account. It goes straight to the insurance companies.
Yeah, a paycheck doesn't exactly feel like it's expanding when rent takes 50% of your take-home pay, regardless of what your employer is spending on your health premium.
And that grounds the data in reality. The struggle is very real. But there is another massive sociological driver of household inequality that rarely makes the headlines, and that's shifting demographics.
Wait, demographics?
Yeah. How we construct our households has changed dramatically, and that heavily skews the data.
How does who we live with affect macroeconomic wealth statistics?
Well, in past generations, you had way more multi-generational homes or households with one primary breadwinner that stayed together. Today, there has been a massive increase in people choosing to stay single, living alone, or functioning as single-parent households.
Right.
Naturally, a one-income household is going to have less wealth than a home pooling resources. But on top of that, we have the rise of what sociologists call assortative mating.
Which means, like, marrying like.
Correct. High earners are increasingly marrying other high earners. 50 years ago, a corporate executive might have married their secretary, or a doctor might have married a nurse.
Which disperse the income.
Exactly, dispersed income levels across different households. Today, the corporate lawyer is marrying the specialized surgeon.
So if you have two people making $250,000 each, and they combine their incomes, their household wealth skyrockets into the stratosphere.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, a single 25-year-old barista living alone nationally has one income. The statistics make the gap between those two households look like an impossible canyon.
And it is a canyon. But it is vital to understand that a significant portion of that measured gap is a reflection of shifting cultural trends in marriage and living arrangements, not just, a system of greedy corporations suppressing wages.
Sure, the statistics might skew it, but that doesn't invalidate the fact that the single 25-year-old today can't afford to buy a starter home, whereas a single person on an average salary 40 years ago could.
No, you're right.
There is still a massive disparity in actual earning power.
Yeah.
The wealthy are still pulling away.
They are, and that brings us to the actual engine of wage disparity in the modern world, which is the skill premium.
Yeah.
The global economy has fundamentally changed what it values.
How so?
Well, as the world becomes infinitely more complex, it places a massive premium on highly specialized labor, and it severely discounts general labor.
So it's the difference between being a barista and being a software engineer. Both work hard, maybe even the exact same number of hours, but the pay disparity is massive.
Let's use the concept of leverage to explain why that happens. A barista provides unleveraged labor. They can only make one cup of coffee at a time.
Right.
Their physical output is capped by time and physics. They might work incredibly hard sweating behind the counter, but the economic value they generate is localized to that single transaction.
Whereas the software engineer provides highly leveraged labor.
Exactly. A software engineer writes a piece of code for a food delivery app once. That same piece of code is then instantly used by 2 million people across the country.
Oh, wow.
The engineer's labor is completely decoupled from the hours they worked. The modern economy pays for the scale of that leverage. The market desperately needs specific, rare skills that can be leveraged globally. If your skill is common and unleveraged, your wage will only ever track with inflation at best.
That makes total sense. It's not about the physical effort you put in, it's about the scale of the problem you are solving.
Right.
It's like the economy upgraded its operating system, and if you haven't downloaded the latest specialized skills, your hardware just can't process the new high-paying jobs. You aren't necessarily moving backward, but everyone else is just zooming past you.
That's a perfect analogy.
But if the math of capital naturally favors the rich, and the job market heavily favors leveraged skills, it makes sense why people feel so defeated. Does that sense of defeat actually become a self-fulfilling prophecy? I want to look at the behavioral side of this.
It absolutely does, and this is where behavioral economics provides some of the most critical insights into why the wealth gap persists. For a long time, the self-help industry tried to explain the psychology of poverty by just saying people had a negative mindset or a scarcity mentality.
As if simply thinking positive thoughts would pay the rent,
Right.
which is incredibly dismissive to someone who's genuinely struggling to survive. You can't, like, manifest a lower grocery bill.
Precisely. But behavioral economists like Senhil Malothan and Eldar Shafir has studied what actual financial scarcity does to the human brain. They found that poverty acts as a cognitive tax.
A cognitive tax.
Yeah. When you are constantly worried about making rent, avoiding eviction, or paying for a broken down car, it consumes your cognitive bandwidth. It literally lowers your functional IQ in the moment because your brain is forced into short-term survival mode.
It's like having too many tabs open on your computer. Your brain is running in the background, constantly calculating how much money is in checking, which bill can be paid late, and what happens if you get sick. The whole system just slows down.
That is a perfect way to conceptualize it. When your cognitive load is maxed out by immediate survival, you literally do not have the mental bandwidth to make long-term strategic decisions.
Right.
You can't think about a 5-year investment strategy or going back to school for a leveraged skill when you are just trying to figure out how to survive until Friday.
Meanwhile, the wealthy have what economists call slack.
Yes. Financial safety nets create cognitive slack. The wealthy don't have to spend any mental energy worrying about their basic needs. This frees up their entire cognitive bandwidth to focus on long-term strategy, spotting opportunities, and taking calculated risks.
It makes me think of playing a video game on defense versus offense. If you were playing a game with only one hit point left, you spend the whole time hiding behind cover, avoiding enemies, just trying not to die.
Yeah, exactly.
You don't take risks because any mistake is fatal. You are just surviving. But the wealthy players have full health bars and extra lives. They are out exploring the map, fighting bosses for rare loot, taking damage, but ultimately leveling up because they're playing on offense.
The video game analogy captures the difference in risk tolerance perfectly, but we have to remember the consequences here are real world. It's not just about losing a life in a game. It's about bankruptcy or eviction.
Right. The stakes are way higher.
Exactly. Wealth allows you to take offensive risks. When the stock market crashes, the person living paycheck to paycheck panics because their retirement is tied up in it and they might lose their job.
Yeah.
But the wealthy investor looks at the exact same crash and sees a fire sale on assets. They buy the dip because they have the capital and the cognitive slack to view a crisis as an opportunity.
So if we pull all these threads together, we have the exponential math of capital compounding, the sociological shift of high-income households consolidating, the massive premium the market pays for leveraged skills, and the cognitive tax of financial scarcity.
It's a lot.
It is. How does society actually deal with this? Because it seems like an incredibly complex web of systems that naturally pulls wealth to the top. What do we even do about it?
Well, that is the defining political and economic question of our time. And there are two broadly different approaches to addressing it, which we can look at objectively. Let's call them Approach A and Approach B.
Okay. Approach A being the more interventionist side.
Yes. Approach A argues that because capital naturally snowballs due to that wealth-attained advantage, the system will inevitably lead to an oligarchy if left alone.
Because the math just favors the top.
Exactly. They point out that the math simply doesn't favor the working class over time. Therefore, their solution is to manually intervene. This includes policies we hear debated today, like forgiving student loan debt to relieve that cognitive tax on young people.
Or implementing a universal basic income.
Right, or heavily taxing the unrealized capital gains of billionaires to forcefully redistribute wealth.
So the logic there is that you have to actively tilt the playing field back because gravity is constantly pulling all the money to one side.
Exactly. Approach A believes that robust social safety nets and wealth redistribution are necessary for the long-term stability and health of a society.
And approach B.
Then you have approach B. This side looks at the exact same data but draws a very different conclusion. They argue that heavily taxing wealth and intervening in the market often backfires.
Because capital moves.
Yes. They point out that capital is highly mobile. If you tax it too heavily, the wealthy simply move their investments elsewhere, which stifles the innovation and business growth that actually creates jobs.
So if approach B doesn't want to tax and redistribute, what is their solution to the barista who can't afford a house?
Approach B focuses on the supply side and deregulation. They argue that the reason the barista can't afford a house is because overregulation makes it too expensive to build new housing, creating artificial scarcity.
Okay, so their solution is to just build more.
Build more, make it easier to start small businesses and easier to acquire skills. Instead of forgiving college debt, approach B might argue for incentivizing companies to hire based on skills rather than degrees.
Which would reduce the need for young people to take on that debt in the first place.
Right. They want to focus on creating more pathways for people to build their own capital rather than trying to redistribute existing capital.
It's basically a debate between redistributing the slices of the current pie versus making it easier for more people to get into the kitchen and bake their own pies.
That sums it up perfectly. Both sides acknowledge that the wealth gap is a serious issue that threatens social cohesion, but they have fundamentally different philosophies on the role of government and the mechanics of the market.
And, as a listener, depending on your own values, you might lean strongly toward one or the other. But regardless of the macroeconomic policies that get passed in Washington, the reality on the ground for you right now remains the same.
It does. Systemic change takes decades. You have to navigate the economy that exists today.
Let's summarize what we've unpacked in this deep dive. The phrase, the rich get richer and the poor get poorer, captures a very real structural dynamic. But it's not a simple story of villains and victims.
No, it's not.
It's driven by the exponential math of capital outpacing linear wages. It's skewed by the reality that high earners are marrying each other and pooling wealth. It's accelerated by an economy that pays a massive premium for leveraged skills while discounting manual labor. And it is reinforced by the cognitive tax of scarcity, which makes it incredibly difficult for people at the bottom to play the game on offense.
Understanding those mechanisms, basic separating the math from the emotion, is the first step to figuring out your own strategy.
Which brings us to our final thought.
I want to leave you with this. We've established that the system naturally rewards those who already hold capital. It rewards leverage. If you are starting out with zero financial capital, the most radical and effective thing you can do isn't just to complain about the rules of the game.
Right.
It is to change what you are actively accumulating.
If you don't have a snowball of money, you need a different kind of snowball.
Exactly. What if the most valuable, untouchable asset you can acquire right now isn't money at all? What if it is a highly specialized, highly leveraged skill that the future economy simply cannot function without?
Like advanced data analysis or something.
Yeah, specialized healthcare, understanding artificial intelligence infrastructure. Because once you acquire a skill that scales, a skill that the market desperately needs but few people possess, you start being just labor.
You become the capital. You become the asset that compounds.
You become the capital. And the math starts working for you.
Think about that the next time you feel overwhelmed by the state of the economy. You might not be able to control the steepness of the hill or the policies in Washington, but you absolutely control what kind of snowball you are pushing. We'll see you next time on The Missing Lesson.